There I am. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the March meeting of OCRA. We'll start off with introductions, and we'll begin with Fred. Boyd. Boyd Hudson, KO4GJO, Hillsborough.
Fred Gavillo, KN4QBZ, Pittsburgh.
Ron Craig, KO4RON, Pittsburgh.
Karen, KD4YJZ, Halfland.
Dave, NA4VY, Mebane.
Dan, KR4UB, Southwest Orange County.
John, KM4MDR, Efland.
And Paul, N0US, Hillsborough.
Bob, W4FK, Hillsborough.
Dave, W4SAR, Efland.
Bruce, N1LN, Chapel Hill.
Lori, N1YXU, Chapel Hill.
Brad, WZ4BSS, Hillsborough.
Todd, KR4KDZ, North Durham.
I'm Dave, K4DJW, Rougemont.
I love it. Todd was reading his call sign because he's a brand new ham. Speaking of new,
John, KR4GOK, Burlington.
Steve, KZ1X, Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
Paul, number 2, and 2XF, Butner.
Dave, I think number 4, KN4QOT, Northeast Orange.
I wanted to put him at the end because I wanted to take the opportunity to call him out. This is Chief Dave Parker, former chief of the Durham Fire Department. I met Dave. I met Dave at Fayetteville with the OCRA training course. Dave was an instructor. If you want to understand OCSCOM, you want to understand ICS, you want to understand how this all works, we have a ringer. This guy, he's got it. So he is an instructor. He will be teaching other courses. Thank you. What did we get?
Good evening. My name is Pat, KO4QLU from Durham.
And I'm Matthew, KQ4ZYW, Secretary for OCRA. And on Zoom, we have our usual peanut gallery, JR, N4JQR, Jerry, KR4NJ, Charles, KQTNF, Kevin, KW4EE, and Mark, KR3AM. Look alive, Wilson.
Yeah, Wilson, W4BOH, Hillsborough. Zoom operator.
Okay, so we got check-ins done with. Officer reports. Anybody? Always good to hear. Fred?
A nominating committee is still looking for. What are we looking for? Somebody raise your hand, please. We're looking for a president. Nothing heard.
Yeah, as Fred mentioned, we're still looking for a president. We can always have a special election. Anyone that is the last one out at the door tonight, we'll say that's the president. Uh, yeah, Dave might be the first one out tonight for the first time ever. But I just wanted to get some updates, especially since Aurora isn't here tonight. This coming Sunday at 3 p.m. at the Land of Magic, which is Wilson's house. We're going to be continuing our radio from TV scrap project, as Wilson usually calls it, TV terrorism. That's always a fun thing. If it's very laid back, we talk from everything from actual radio parts to the price of gold to anything that comes to Wilson's mind. And then another follow-up with DFMA, we're going to be doing Parks on the Air event. I think that's going to be May 2nd, I think. Yes. And if you're interested, just let me know and I can add you to the email list. We only have the date. We don't have the time and actual location, but that should be decided soon. I think that's all of my updates.
Thank you, Matt. So we'll go to Wilson for the first presentation on batteries and such.
Did you say, am I ready? Don't be silly. Okay, I checked with Aurora and she said I had 2 hours. I think I'm going to be able to keep it down. So now, this is the last page. We probably should go to the first page. It has a 1 on it. Genuine corporate grade pointer here. Unbeknownst to me, my printer scanned it backwards. Okay. Are there any questions? Yeah, 0 is good, but it's not very important. So I got this vague invitation. And I asked Aurora the title, and she said, make it up, but talk about batteries. So backup batteries. You don't need to know about how to back up your HT. So I have expanded a little bit to what will you do during a power outage? Do you want to stay alive? I'm limiting the scope to 12 volts. The 90% of people here who already know all this will realize that you can have primary voltage of 12, 24, 36, 48, etc. And the higher you go in battery voltage, the more power you can make because the current stays reasonable. 12 volts at 100 amps is 1200 watts. 24 volts at 100 amps is 2400 watts. 36 volts at 100 amps is 3600 watts. So you get it. But most of us have a lot of 12 volt things, and 12 volt things are cheap. So we're keeping it small. If we really have an outage, your life will change. You'll get cold, you'll get hot, you'll get hungry, you'll get thirsty, etc. So we'll touch on some of the maybe important things. Let me turn that down a little bit. Hello, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Should we practice singing out Mike, Mike, Mike? Anybody want to say Mike, Mike, Mike? Okay, let's go to number one. So I'm old, so I tend to think of words as having meaning. Here's a little dry cell. A battery is a group of cells, electrochemical, chemical things that make electricity, and you can hook them up to provide the voltage and or the current you need. And here's a little dry cell, like in your flashlight, metallic case, carbon anode, some kind of electrolyte. Is it dry? No, but it sounds good. It's gooey. You don't want it, and you don't want it on your fingers, and you don't want it spilling out in your flashlight either. Anybody ever seen that? So in your car, you have a wet cell, a tank with a hostile electrolyte, in our case, usually sulfuric acid, and some plates made of lead, and we call those wet cells. Modern ones often have the electrolyte soaked up in some paper rags, or they're called absorbent glass mat, HEM batteries. You'll see that. They're still lead acid batteries. So what do we do with them? Oh, did I say this is not a battery? This is a cell. Cells can be hooked up to form batteries, groups of cells. So here we are with a series of batteries, and I've labeled them 1V, 2V. V means the voltage of the battery, so it might be a 1.5 volt battery or whatever. And here's twice as much, 3 times as much, 4 times as much. So if these are 1.5 volt batteries, that's a 6 volt battery. That's why you make a 6 volt battery out of 1.5 volt cells. Or you can hook them in parallel. And what do they do here? And the current is the same all along here. The Kirchhoff's law, the current's the same in all parts of the series circuit. Well, down here, this battery supplies some current, and the load's out here, light bulb or radio or whatever. So this battery supplies some current, this battery supplies some current, etc. So I being that's the little current we're looking at. There's one of them here, 2 of them here, 3 of them here, but 4 of them get out to the radio. Okay. Be surprised how many people confuse this. Currents add, voltage is the same. That's pretty obvious because they're all connected together, kind of have to be the same. Okay, Matthew. I'm not well organized. We're going to jump around a little bit. There are many kinds of batteries. Some of them have silver in them, some of them have copper in them, just all kind of stuff. We've been doing it for about 200 years, but tonight we're going to talk about what we might run into in our daily operation and so on. We got the lead base, like in your car. Good old lead acid battery, which we looked at a while ago. There are little ones in your UPS. It's under your desk to run your computer. Little bitty ones, but they're nice. Sulfuric acid being the most common electrolyte. And if you think back to 10th grade, you put the electrolyte in water, it dissociates. So you have hydrogen ions and sulfate ions running around. And I'm not great on these. Who remembers their redox equations from the 10th grade? Yeah, me too. The important things are lead and lead sulfate, and they kind of go back and forth. So here's lead reacting with sulfate, making lead sulfate, some hydrogen. You ever hear of a battery explosion? Well, where did it come from? Right there. And here, I garbled that. That's an E minus. What's that for? That's what we're looking for. So that thing goes out and runs around. And at the positive plate, we have another reaction, soaking up some hydrogen, some electrons, and making lead sulfate and water. So have you ever heard somebody say your electrolytes gone to water when the battery runs all the way down? Well, what's the main characteristic of water as far as electricity is concerned? It don't conduct no electricity. So you run your battery all the way down and it gets full of water and you hook up your charger and, well, you better get another battery. Now, sometimes you can bring them back by overvoltaging them and very slowly. Once you get a little action going on, you can react and get some ions in there and sometimes bring them back. So the excitement happens when there's a conductive path from plus to minus, and these little electrons can run around and light your lighter, light your fire, whatever you need. Okay, Matthew, good job. Keep it up. Moving on. You know, about 10 years ago, Steve Jackson came to the OCRA meeting and he told us how great lithium ferrophosphate batteries are. And I never forgot. And of course, I wasn't sure at the time, but in that intervening 10 years, he's been proven right. And they are really good. So they have a container, a couple of electrodes. One of them is carbon. One of them is lithium ferrophosphate. Did you ever hear of the preppers? Anybody know any preppers? You ever hear of a LifePo? If you hear of somebody talking about a LifePo battery, please hit them on the head. So what's going on in there? And quite frankly, I'm not very good on these reactions, and I did not take time to study. Lithium is being ionized and producing electrons in the discharge. In the charge, you're putting electrons back. At the cathode, ferrophosphate and lithium are combined back to lithium ferrophosphate. Now, without understanding these, do they look simpler than the other ones to anybody? You don't have those complicated ions running around, and they don't tend to explode. So these are separated by a porous membrane, which is just a plastic, like you'd use in your garden. It's porous. I don't know what they all are, but that allows this interchange to take place. And once again, we get current out here. So I've embarrassed myself on chemistry. But everybody, let's talk about let's say what these elements are. What's that? Li. What? Phosphorus. Okay. You remember in 10th grade, you had to memorize all, was it 101? It's more now, maybe 105. Wow. You're older than I thought. Okay, Matthew. So let's talk about some words that we have to use. Volt, electrical potential. You get shocked if you touch those two things. Named after Alessandro Volta, 1745 to 1820. Around 1800, boy, things were really starting to happen. And these were giants of people. I mean, I don't know if you've ever tried to tell your mother-in-law what a volt is, but it's difficult. Can you imagine doing it in 1800? What the hell are they talking about? Amps. The rate of flow of electrons. That's current. Flowing around. Marie Andre Ampere, 1775 to 1836. There you go. What? Remember him from England? Steam engines and all that kind of stuff. The rate of doing work, which we call power, and that's volt times amps, or if you're in a more engineering orientation, I times E, 1736 to 1819. How about that? So then we use these things to talk about an amp hour. That's the summation of current in your circuit over time. And it need not be constant. You might draw an amp for an hour. You might draw 2 amps for an hour. You might draw half an amp for an hour, and then you got 3.5 ampere hours. Okay, that's a key parameter of a battery. How many ampere hours can it produce? At whatever rate. Now, bringing reality into it, the battery works better at lower currents because less power is dissipated by internal resistance, and it lasts longer, has greater capacity. Watt hour, quantity of work or energy. So you're doing work for a while and adding it up. So you may have high, as I was saying, you may have high, you may have low, you may have fast, you may have slow, but it all adds up to watt hours. And here's one of my favorites. You know, I grew up in funny units like British thermal units and horsepower. And then I went to school and I heard about bergs and dynes and centimeters and all that kind of mysterious stuff. And they really work. They're a lot better. But I love BTU. I never get away from BTU. It's a quantity of heat originally. Any quantity of energy like heat or work has equivalence. But what's important? A BTU will heat a pound of water 1 degree Fahrenheit. Okay, that is very useful. Why are you giggling? I can't help I'm old. So here's an even more important one. 8 BTU will heat a gallon of water 1 degree Fahrenheit. Because a gallon's about 8 pounds of water. Okay. And all these numbers are a little bit flexible because I use that to make things come out the way I want them to. But there's no point in you remembering that a gallon of water is 8.297 pounds because some other gallon will be a little bit different. So just remember 8. Or horsepower. We all got those in our car, right? More horsepower, the faster you can go and the quicker you can get there. It's just another unit of power, but it's 2,545 BTU. Or 746 watts, or 550 foot-pounds per second, which is probably where watts started. So if you're really strong and you put up a little pulley and a rope and a 550-pound weight, you can raise that thing 1 foot per second. You're doing a horsepower. Let's have a quiz. What horsepower can you make on a bicycle? Don't ride a bicycle. Anybody ride a bicycle? Sorry? There's some guesses there that are right. A good strong guy can do a half horsepower real for a short period of time. A super trained guy can do 3/4 for an extended period of time. I could probably do 2/10 for a while. Where is it? I must have put it somewhere else. Anybody remember the Gossamer Albatross? The man-powered plane that flew across the English Channel, flown by a guy named Brian Allen. He did 4/10 of a horsepower for over an hour, eating bananas and drinking water, except his water hose fell apart and he was seriously dehydrated when he finally landed on the beach in France. Horsepower hour. Well, that's a unit of work summed over time. So like the amperes, you do a horsepower for this hour and 2 for this hour and 6 for this hour, and you wind up with 9 horsepower hours. Okay. Too many computers. I think we're ready to move on. Most of them are still awake. So let's just do a couple of easy calculations. The power in your system power, volts times amps, 120 volts, 10 amps, 120 watts. 120 volts, 1 amp, 120 watts. So you can get your watts any number of ways. Big, high voltage, low voltage, whatever. If you do 10 amps at 12 volts, you do 10 amp hours for an hour and 120 watt hours. Okay, everybody got that? You can burn a small light bulb for 2 hours on that. You're going to heat a frozen meal in your microwave. The power's been out for a day and you're getting really hungry and you're afraid that the refrigerator's going bad, so you get out a frozen meal and you throw it in the microwave. Well, you better have a 600 watt microwave because your 12 volt system is not going to do well with a 1000 watt microwave, which actually draws about 1800 watts. So I'm actually going to buy me a little bitty microwave for this reason. Say it takes in a small microwave, it's about 10 minutes at a kilowatt or 160 watt hours. So what have I got here? 1000 watts, 12 volts, 83 amps. That's a serious amount of current. This kind of wire. And in that little period of time, you use 13.8 amp hours. Well, if you've bought a 100 amp hour battery, that's a hit. You know, you're not going to make a whole lot of those. So you turn on your TV set, a medium size modern TV, around 100 watts. I get a lot of numbers on that. It's hard. And I didn't look at my own, which I should have. But to make that with your battery and your inverter, and we'll get to inverters later, you need 8 amps, a significant current, not like 80, but significant. So you're not going to watch a whole lot on your TV. You're a lot better off to get your news on your phone or your laptop. And most laptops are around 60 watts. But if you've got some modern light bulbs, 60 watt equivalents, they're around 15 watts. And that's 1.1 and a quarter amps from your battery. Pretty reasonable. So you can see to go to the bathroom quite a few times. Your modem and router, I just changed mine. I'm not sure, but I saw labels like 40 watts. More than you would think. They actually, I felt that they're making some heat. So 3.3 amps, 40 amp hours per day. And your 100 amp hour battery, I don't want to be on the internet that bad. I'd much rather keep my beer cold. Okay, Matthew. At last, the subject of our talk. Only you can determine what you need. Your system size is determined largely by your maximum demand. In other words, any battery is good for a certain amount of current. If you need more current, like our first picture, you need more battery. So you need to think about the biggest things you're going to do. And this is nowhere near an exhaustive list, but I put the most important one first. Modern refrigerators are remarkable. Some are even below 200 watts. And so you can think, well, they run 4 hours a day. What's their duty cycle? I don't know, 15%, 20%. So here's a way to guess how much you're going to need for that. Your well pump is fairly reasonable. And fortunately, it doesn't run very long. Unfortunately, the well pump that I just got rid of had an 18 amp starting surge. Well, your little generator ain't going to do that. And your 3000 watt inverter ain't going to do that. So when I replaced it, I got a soft start that starts at 0 and ramps up to 1200 watts. Now I can furnish water to the neighborhood. I mean, it's really great. My cycle is about 25 gallons, which takes about 5 minutes. Who knows? I don't know how much water I use, but probably 100 gallons a day. So it's not a whole lot of cycles. If the house were full of people taking showers, it would be more, but it's doable. Your HT charger does almost nothing. Your coffee pot's pretty serious. It only runs about 15 minutes. So you can work out the amperes there and see what you need. I have a little dual hot plate, big one and a little one, 500 watts and 1,000 watts. Really nice. I also have a gas stove, but this will come up again. When the weather got really cold, my stove wouldn't work because my regulator on the propane tank was frozen up. But now and then you get a little bit of moisture in propane and it'll freeze your regulator and you will be cold. So I reported to AmeriGas, please get out as soon as possible. And that's been 3 weeks now. And the weather's warming up. So theoretically, they're coming one of these first days. Don't ever get involved with AmeriGas. I'll say I'm not going to say anymore. We might be on TV. If you have a way to cook on propane, that's really great. Camp stove or whatever. I don't know about your massage chair, but I do know about electric blankets. And I'll tell you, I've been experimenting with sleeping, and I've been down to 48 this year, sleeping very nicely under my electric blanket. And if there are 2 people under there, even better. I think I don't have 2 people anymore. So things that are nice to have, this probably should be over here. So you got little lights. It doesn't take much. A couple of LED bulbs will light up everything you need. Big microwave is really kind of too much for what we're talking about. Small microwave, you can do it. It's comparable to the well pump. A little electric heater, 1 to 1.5 kW. You ain't going to do that very long. You aren't going to run your heat pump at all. It has an enormous starting surge. They're being put out now with soft starts. You can actually retrofit a soft start so you can get your heat pump into the range of where you can run it on a sort of sensible generator. Hot water, there are small ones up to 5 kW. I disconnected one side of mine and looked at the neutral, so I'm running on 120. And that's really neat for power consumption control. Now, it's still a lot of power, and I wouldn't do it. But if you're running a generator and you're really determined to take a shower, you can do it that way. Okay, Matthew. Sorry? No, but I'd be happy to measure. It's probably 100 wattish, something like that. Well, it might be summertime. Not all outages are in the winter. So we're going to talk about making power with inverters and generators. 2 things have revolutionized our world: the field effect transistor, and Chinese manufacturing. You can buy an inverter now that is so good and so cheap. It used to cost thousands of dollars, and I just bought a 3 kW for $225. Now, I don't know how long it's going to last, but I can virtually guarantee that it will last the duration of any outages that we're going to have in the foreseeable future. So yeah, you may get a bad one, but try it out. If it works, it's probably going to keep working. Always overbuy, because like all entrepreneurs and merchants, it's overrated. So I try to stay around 50%. They'll undoubtedly do more, and it might do 3,000, but I don't want to be there to find out. So a simple system, you hook your battery to your inverter and you plug in some extension cords. I bet a lot of people have done that. There's some in the kitchen and one in the bathroom and one in the laundry. You know, pretty soon you get 4 or 5 of them running around. Suppose you forgot to buy a battery. Just hook your inverter to your car battery. Excellent power, especially if you have a 57 Chevrolet with a great big battery. And If the battery gets low, crank the car, let it charge a while. Of course, if you wait too long, you might have to jump it from your other car. But seriously, you can do this and run an extension cord in the house and do a lot of things. So you keep adding on. Battery inverter, well, it's going to run down. So you hook up a generator and a charger, and you can replace what you use from the battery. Not only that, you can supply big loads because the inverter is capable of more than your generator. So your battery's kind of buffering your whatever it is, your production system. Your battery can handle the big stuff, and the generator builds it up. Now you got to have a charger. That's okay. You're going to be buying a lot of other stuff, and you can integrate all this with your house. I'll show you a picture of this. Here's your breaker panel, and this is a little dingus that keeps you from feeding power back down the power line and hurting the electric guy who's working on trying to fix the outage. Now, does that really happen? I don't know. Realistically, your inverter probably can't drive your electric grid. But if the outage is near and you have only one transformer, like I have a transformer up at Chris's house, if the primary of that blows, I could perfectly well make 10,000 volts on that one transformer and get a guy. Well, this is neat because everything in the house works. You have to turn off your sauna and your hot tub and your wall oven. But with those constraints, everything works normally. So here's buffering a large load. And you don't need the battery system if you want to buy the fuel and you have a generator you like, you can just feed it in here. Okay, Matthew, please. I think we're going to make 2 hours. It's going pretty fast. So 12 volts, 100 amp hours, kind of a standard. That's a car-sized battery, either in lithium or lead acid. A large car battery, like in your pickup truck, or an older car. A Prius, a little one. But that's kind of a benchmark size to think about. Why was Steve so right about this being the best battery? Specific energy. What does that mean? Watt hours per pound. Okay. How many watt hours can you carry around? Well, in lead acid, you get 15 or 20. In lead ferrophosphate, you get up to 100. And that's changing all the time. I mean, techniques, chemistry is improving. Density and volume, how big is it? Lead acid, 80, 90 watt hours per liter. Lithium ferrophosphate, 200 to 400. A lot of energy there. Most of the batteries you see are only a half or 2/3 really the battery. The electronics takes the rest, and we'll mention electronics sometime, I think. Lithium ferrophosphate's a little more sensitive to temperature. The battery in your Tesla or your Chevy Bolt is actually heated in cold weather. Cuts down your range, but optimizes what you can get from the battery. Here's the BMS. A lot of electronics. What does it do? It makes each cell work and charge equally. Because if they get out of balance, they can damage each other and you lose capacity, and it's bad. They are sensitive to charging. They really don't do well overcharged or undercharged. Chemistry goes bad and they're ruined. I like this one. I don't know if you've been to AutoZone lately. You get a good 3-year car battery, $200, up from 80 or 90 in fairly recent memory. Absolutely crazy. Meanwhile, lithium ferrophosphate is continually developed. Quantities go up, manufacturing gets better, and it's now competitive. When there's no reason to buy a lead acid battery except to start your car. The car doesn't really meet the charging requirements. The voltage is pretty close, but the maximum current is way too much. Typically, this battery will have a 200 amp BMS, and a big engine on a cold day could take a lot more than 200 amps to turn over. So not really compatible. A big lithium battery in a small car, yeah, probably you get away with it. You aren't going to get its lifetime. So they run down themselves, lead acid 15 or 20% a month. So if you park your car for a year and get in, might turn over, might not. Lithium ferrophosphate, 1 to 3%. Very low self-discharge. And how long does it last? Almost none of us have actually run a lead acid battery up and down. That's why the fisherman has deep cycle marine batteries. They're heavier and they're supposed to do a little bit more. But 300 plus or minus cycles for typical lead acid batteries. Lithium ferrophosphate? Well, look at the life cycle cost. What if you had to do this with this? You'd be buying batteries all the time and you wouldn't have money for beer. Yeah. Okay, here's the chance to laugh at me again. These numbers that I grew up with, literally grew up with. I have a 3x5 card taped to the wall over my desk with these, and you would be absolutely amazed how often I use them. A kilowatt hour is 3412 BTU, about 400 degree gallons. Remember 1 gallon and all that stuff? Or 8 gallons raised 50 degrees. That's a convenient number. Why? You probably take a pretty good shower. Water comes in around 60, you raise it 50. It's lukewarm or a little more. Okay. So a good number to remember. A gallon of kerosene, 135,000 BTU or 40 kilowatt hours. Gasoline, 125,000, 37 kilowatt hours. Now, this is the thermal energy that's in the fuel. A gallon of propane, 84,000 or 25 kilowatt hours. So look at this. Propane weighs 4 1/4. Gasoline weighs 6.2. Kerosene weighs 6.8. Why do you think diesel fuel costs more than gasoline? Why do you think a diesel engine can produce a lot of power? The heavier fuels have more energy. For a long time, they were cheaper because of what demand wasn't there. But a few years ago, demand caught up. And you probably never see diesel cheaper than gasoline again. Why do diesel cars get better mileage? There you go. More energy in their fuel. Also, their engines run hotter, higher compression, which thermodynamically makes them more efficient. And it all adds up. So typical generator that you might have. There's a YouTube guy who builds stuff, and he messed around and he built the generator with a car alternator, and he did some tweaks and he got it working reasonably well. And I've seen this number elsewhere, about 5 kilowatt hours per gallon of gasoline. And these are real handy, you know. Once you've thought about adding up your loads and integrating your watt hours and amp hours and all that stuff, you have some idea what you need. So then you can figure out how much gasoline you need to store. This is a gallon. So here's your 125,000 BTU. You're getting 17,000 BTU of electricity out of it. Is that a good deal? Are you going to run that gasoline generator to run the heater in your bathroom? Not a great idea. If that's all you have to, but you'd be a lot better off to burn the gasoline or to burn the diesel fuel. So here's old Rudolph. Everybody know Rudolph? Rudolph Diesel? 1858 to 1913. So he was a lot later than the electrical stuff. But here we take our 135 and we get 24,000. I didn't work the efficiency on that. I think that's somewhat higher. So run a generator power electric heater is not a great deal. Get an oil heater or a propane heater, and you'll get almost all the energy that's in your fuel. Or an electric blanket, which still takes electricity, but a lot less. And again, maybe more fun. Okay, just a word about generators. Plain Jane, what we've always seen, your neighbor has in the backyard and it makes a hell of a noise. It runs at 3,600 RPM. It's loud. What's its efficiency when it's running 2 light bulbs? Almost zero. It takes probably 2 horsepower to keep all that stuff spinning around. Terrible. It's just an engine, 60 hertz alternator, and you get power from it. Why is it 3,600 RPM? Speak up. Gears. Ain't no gears in there. So this is a 2-pole generator. If you divide this, you to get 60 per second right here, you'll find that you need a 2-pole generator. If it had more poles, it wouldn't have to run so fast. Early CW transmitters. You know about the alternator in Spain, in Sweden? Giant, hundreds of horsepower, 8-10 feet in diameter, alternator with, I don't know, 100 poles that spins at a remarkable thousands of RPM. It gets the frequency up to about 15 or 20,000. And that can be used for broadcasting. And sorry? Carefully. If you Google Grimeton, Grimeton, you'll get Grimeton, Sweden, where the Alexanderson alternator is. Made in the United States, by the way, by General Electric. It's enormous. I mean, it takes a big room, and there are all kind of pumps and little motors and big motors. Very interesting stuff. But it was, should I say this? It was probably the first really pure tone CW, because it was just making good, clean AC at a frequency that could be radiated. Now, the antenna's a 1.5 miles long, but it could be radiated. So, what's an inverter? Well, we'll wait just a minute. An inverter generator has an engine, an alternator, rectifier, and inverter. But it doesn't have to run at constant speed, because the inverter is an electronic system. Think of it as an oscillator that's running at 60 hertz and a great big amplifier. So you can make 60 hertz power. All right. So what does this do? You put some electronic controls in here and you monitor your load, and you can adjust the engine speed. You seen those little Honda generators? They idle down to very low speed when the load is low, because they don't need much power. So they make just enough power to make the amount of AC they need. And if you turn on the iron or your beer cooler or whatever, the system will see that and speed up the engine, to make enough power so when it's rectified, it can run the inverter. Well, this is the same thing. Speed can be reduced, a lot less heat, noise. Now, at full power, no, it's not quieter, except that most of them are packaged now in sound deadening cases. So that's why they sound so much better. And there are open frame inverter generators, and at full power, they make about the same noise as a plain chain. Okay, gasoline, dangerous, spoils. You have to put stabilizer in it. And, you know, different people have, I've seen gasoline last 2 or 3 years, and I've seen it last 6 months. Gasoline vapor goes everywhere. You leave an open container of gasoline and a while and throw a match down and you'd be astounded. I did it in the front yard once, a little cup of gasoline and just set it down. And I don't know how long I went away, but something like 15 or 20 minutes. And I went back out there and just threw a match, not into the container, just out somewhere near. And I got about a 20-foot circle, beautiful, perfect circle of this vapor going up. Nice blue flame. So you don't want that in your house. You don't really want that in your garage, etc. Diesel is much less volatile. It'll burn if you set a match to it, but it's a lot less likely to cause a problem. Unfortunately, diesel engines are heavier, more rugged, more difficult to build, and therefore your diesel generators are more expensive. You see them in China, you can get little 3-5 horsepower diesels, but very scarce here. Propane, you don't have to touch it. Clean, it lasts forever. Burns clean. Unfortunately, most of us had those little 4-gallon, 5-gallon grill tanks, which, you know, that's going to do you, with careful management, a day or two. I realized I had 5 during the last excitement of ice, so I went and got them all filled. But even that, I mean, if there's a major thing like weeks or a week or 2, that might not be enough, and they run out of it. I went to Tractor Supply. I didn't need it, but I went there the second day of the ice storm, and the line was out in the parking lot. People waiting hours to fill their propane tank. I went back a couple weeks later and there was no line. It was $3.09 a gallon. I went back last week and it was $3.89, thanks to our airplanes flying in the Mideast. There are a number of dealers. If you could find one with the great big 3,000 gallon tank, you know, the real big time dealer, they're probably going to have it. Tractor Supply and high demand is going to last a few days, and they probably aren't going to get refilled. How about that? I told them it was too high. I guess maybe that's what. Oh, okay. Well, they must have heard I was talking about. I told you about regulator icing. Not so much a problem on our little portable generator because you set your tank in front of the cooling output of the generator, and that keeps it warm and enthusiastic about coming out and going into the engine. So I bit the bullet and bought a dual fuel. And what am I going to do with that? Number one, I'll probably never use it, but if I do, I'm going to run on my 5 tanks of propane until they run out, and then hopefully the outage will be over. I don't plan to put any gasoline in ever if I can avoid it. And the propane leaves no deposits. So that's my insurance. I also bought a gas generator, which might be on the market. Okay, let's finish up. We're not quite 2 hours yet. Air conditioning and heat, beyond this talk. You want to put in a 25 kW generator and a 300 gallon tank, you know, spend $5,000 to $10,000. You can live just like you always did. and then you get the bill. That's going to be $50, $75 a day. Mostly we need to run our beer cooler, our lights, our well pump, if you're on a well. Nice to do the microwave. If your gas stove works, that's great, but I don't know if it'd be good for frozen meals. I haven't tried that. But of course, that's the way to get some heat and some cooking. Little camp stoves are nice. You get them with small bottles, but if you ever compute the price of propane in a 2-pound bottle, you probably buy something else. You can buy a hookup to connect your camp stove to a grill tank and cook forever. You sort of run your half, 3/4 horsepower washing machine, but I'm not that interested in being clean. Dryer, no, that's several kilowatts. You're not going to run that. No, I don't. But some people do. If you do, then you still got to run the motor, probably a half horse, and you could do that. It'll be a big drain. You better have a generator. So I rewired my water heater, and it's very successful. I also have in my bathroom, where it took a long time for the water to come in, a 2-gallon tank right under the floor, under the sink in the bathroom. Greatest thing I ever did. Terrific hot water. Draws a kilowatt. I don't know how long it takes to recover, but not very long. But it would be reasonable to run that on a standby system. And then you could wash your hands and face. It's not better than your propane cooktop, but it's better than other things. Batteries are neat because once they charge up, they're available. It's a big difference in a battery and a generator. It's always there. It will give you 10 watts or 50 watts or 100 watts or 1,000 watts, whatever you happen to need. So nothing to worry about until it runs down. But then you can recharge it with your generator if you have an appropriate charger. Run the generator at some reasonably efficient level, a few hundred watts, and recharge your battery, and it's ready to go. Oh yeah, here's the funny part. Solar. How many people have a solar generator besides Bob? Well, I'm surprised. You look like you're not sure. I mentioned entrepreneurs before, which is a 4-letter word as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how we got solar generators, but here's Bob's, and it's really neat. You can plug your radio or HT or 10-watt QRP into this and do POTA and all that sort of stuff. You could run your CPAP machine for a while. But get ready now. Here's a quiz. Where's the solar part? Where's the generator part? Ain't none. So here's a battery with a charger and inverter built in, and it's really nice. Have you taken yours to the field yet? You're going to be in trouble. Your wife did a lot of trouble to find this. So Jackery, here it is right here, solar generator. Ain't neither one. Okay, Matthew. So what do I do? How many people know Adriano? Adriano deals in UPSs and replacing batteries in industrial UPSs, and occasionally has some batteries for sale. 100-pound, 100-amp-hour ATM batteries that are changed because they've been in the system a few years, and the hospital or the data center isn't sure they're going to run right when the power fails, so they take them out and put in new ones at fantastic, unbelievable cost. So I have 6 12-volt batteries theoretically about 7 kilowatt hours, but they're 5 or 6 years old. So I'm calling it 5 for now. I made a mistake here. I have a 3 kilowatt Chinese inverter. That's probably wrong. 20 some amps. I'm not counting on 3 kilowatts. So then I feed that into a 1.5 kilowatt step up transformer. I raise 120 to 240 3-wire. And here's my transformer. This is called an auto transformer. I'm not transferring all the power across the core with magnetic flux. I'm driving half the winding, and then flux is driving this half the winding, and it's making 240 across here in neutral. So I can still get my 120 and my 120. So I feed that to the breaker panel through the input breaker and the interlock. Okay, Matthew, let's go to pictures. Not that picture. Here you go. See that one? There are 4 of those. And there are 2 of these. And here's the side view. So these top ones are long. And then there are 4 in there. And don't make fun of this wood. This thing happened entirely by accident. I had these 4 on this dolly. And I kept looking at it and said, well, you should get that hooked up. You know, it wasn't hooked up to anything. And so I started hooking it up, and then I said, well, you have those other 2. Why don't you hook them up too? So I just kept looking for scrap wood and stacking these things up. Here's the transformer. So this plug plugs into the inverter or a generator, 120 volt generator. And out of here comes 240, 3-wire. Out here comes 120. And here's the business end of the inverter. So this plugs into here. Okay, we'll have another one, Matthew. Oh, this got turned somehow. Look at this wire. 2 gauge. It's 2 gauge. It's as big as most people want to handle. It takes special crimpers to do it, or really hot soldering irons, but it can be managed. But here's where it connects to the inverter. I don't think it's shown, but I only have a 15 amp charger right now, but I'll say more about that in a minute. So here's my new gas generator, and here's my new dual fuel, which is really a little nicer and a little bigger. And here's its propane regulator. So you screw this on top of your grill tank and crank her up, maybe. Quiet, really nice. So I can set this right outside the Land of Magic door and fire it up. Okay, Matthew, what we got next? Here's the interlock. I don't know if you can picture it, but see this little offset here and this offset here? What that does is keeps this breaker off as long as this breaker on. This is the main 200 amp feed to the house. If you pull that down, this can slide over, and this can slide over, and this can move to the right, which turns on the input. So here's a 240 plug to go into the inverter extension cord that's coming from the inverter or the generator. And then you're kind of up to date. I mean, you're not going to kill anybody. But it's the Land of Magic. So I was looking around the Land of Magic, and I found a 1500 watt UPS, 36 volts. Well, I'm not going to buy 36 volts of batteries to hook that thing up. So I tore it apart. It has an enormous big transformer in it. And I found that I could get the right voltage with a full wave rectifier to charge my 12 volt batteries. So here's my 40 amp or so battery charger being put together. Now, no regulation. You're not going to walk away and leave this thing cooking on your batteries. You'll probably fry them. But as long as something's being drawn and things are going on, you put some power in from your generator whenever you want to. Sorry? Oh, these are lead acid. I got 6 of them. They were $50 a piece. New, they were probably, Dan, $400 a piece. So the latest thing, you can buy a 5 kilowatt hour lithium ferrophosphate pack with BMS for $1,600. You can't get close to it with lead acid, but they were there. So all I had to do was hook them up. I don't know how long they will last. I don't know how much they put out, but I've run on them for several hours, and I've run the well pump for a couple of days. And it was fine. Any more? Oh, what happened to the girls? Okay. Any questions? I can't believe it. Next, we have our POTA power outage expert, Dave Snyder.
Here we go. Okay. I actually did this presentation 2 years ago when I first put this pack together. And you mentioned Adriano with the batteries. Well, for field day, I had managed to get from Adriano 2 of the lead acid glass batteries that were 2 of them each that were 180 amps. But guess what? They were also 180 pounds each. So needless to say, I couldn't move them without help. So and they've started showing signs of wear. Like a couple of field days later, I noticed that they were not holding up the same capacity. I was starting to have trouble with the radio because the voltage was dropping down very rapidly, and I was having operating troubles. So I heard about these newfangled LiFePO4 batteries, and I thought I'd give it a try at putting one of those packs together. And I'm very happy I did. There was a few slides prior to this on the presentation, but they've already been outdated a bit. For one thing, I had on there that that these batteries were one of the disadvantages. They were 3 to 4 times the cost of lead acid batteries. It's down much closer now, fortunately. So these cells that I have in here that have 4 cells in here, they were $150 a piece when I got them. So kind of expensive at the time. This is a 200 amp hour pack that I have here. And one of the things you have to do with a lithium phosphate battery is it must have a good battery control system on there. And the one I recommended, the one I found, and I found good reviews on at the time, was the Overkill, which is an American company, BMS. It was imported from China, their control panels for that, and they would vet them and do the programming for them. And the real thing I really liked about it was that it had a Bluetooth readout as well. And you can get the app on your phone, and like right now I powered up the Bluetooth, and that's the readout from this battery pack right now. That's on here. I got a couple slides here so you can see it a little bit better. But you could also control it from the app to turn off software switches in there to control the input and output. One problem you have with lithium phosphate batteries, as was alluded to before, is that they're very temperature sensitive. So a good control module will also be monitoring the temperature in there. There's two thermocouples that are in this pack, one in the middle and one on the outside. So if it gets too hot, or even if it gets too cold, the module will shut down the operation on it. One problem you do have with these, the most critical thing that could happen is what they call thermal runaway. If you have one pack that's starting to overcharge and it's getting hot, you start getting into a chemical reaction that's going to keep on going. These will not explode and go into flames like the older other style lithium cells will do, but the battery case will rupture and you've got a dead battery then in that case. But the safeguards that are in here will help prevent that. Now, I mentioned to you that one of the reasons I went looking for this is I needed something much more lightweight. I alluded to the 180 amp hour pack before with the lead acid as being 180 pounds. This here is a 200 amp hour pack, and I'm not a very strong. Pretty much I've had to get along in life by my looks, as you can see. I can move this around my house, no problem. Those of you who heard me on the nets lately, that's what powers my Radio Shack right now. And when my wife and I are going on our living history things where I have to hide any modern kind of gear, we both need CPAPs at night. This thing will keep both our CPAPs running we've done it for 3 nights in a row. So it's got quite a good capacity. Let me flip to the next slides. Okay, I'll skip that one. This is the layout here. So you have the battery control module. I'll open this up later so you can take a closer look at it. One thing you must do, well, before I get into that, you want to make sure you do get quality lithium iron phosphate batteries. And what I recommend looking for, if you go for them, is those that are manufactured by the China Aircraft Lithium Battery Corporation. Those are designed to go into airplanes. And if you have poor or fraudulent quality control in China that gets you killed, you are held very, very accountable there. Okay. We're not talking just jail time. They might end your life there for doing something like that. So you can be pretty much sure that anything from there that's going to go into aircraft, they're going to be of the best quality. Now, I had a supplier on my last on the original presentation here who was on eBay that he would get these batteries from China and he would also vet them himself just to make sure they were good. And those are the ones I got for $150 a piece. I suggest you look around online now, look at reviews of people who have purchased these from suppliers stateside. And if they're good to go and they're new, I say go with those if at all possible. If you go to go for the bargain lithium batteries, it might not end well for you. And I strongly say don't go for secondhand ones. You don't know if they've ever had thermal damage to them. Not a runaway reaction, but a little bit of overheating over 120 degrees for a certain period of time will degrade these batteries pretty badly. So you need to use them in a climate controlled environment. Question.
Is there an American manufacturer of those?
I'll have to look. I believe there is. There may be some. I'm not sure if they're competitive, of course, with the Chinese prices, but that I'll have to look it up. I don't know off the top of my hand, but yeah. Probably, yeah. I'd say they're probably more expensive. And also keep in mind that whatever's going to go on with tariffs and whatnot is going to affect the cost of these as well. Now, once you have your quality LiFePO4 batteries, essentially, he has got Bluetti. Their headquarters is in Nevada, but I think the batteries are made over, of course, So it may be a case of they're imported, but they vet them and make sure they're of good quality. So I would suggest look at reviews of any of these vendors. Don't look at on-site reviews. Look at independent reviews for anything you get here, battery control systems, batteries, and that'll make it a little bit safer for you to make a correct choice. One thing you must do before you put the battery control system onto it is that the batteries all have to be balanced, top balanced first. And the way you do that is I took these 4 cells, connected them in parallel, and you have to get a constant voltage power supply, a good quality one, hooked up to it. And you bring the whole thing up to 3.65 volts. So they're kind of relatively balanced. And then you can put them into series with the BMS attached. And from then on, the BMS will control the balance. Usually there's bleeder resistors set up in between each of the cells. So if one's starting to get, I think it's 15 millivolts is 100 millivolts is for the difference it's allowed. You can set it for each of these. Once it starts seeing that one cell is creeping up above, and I've watched during charging that happens, you'll see the resistor kick on and try to balance it all out. I have not yet. Not yet. Yeah. He's asked if I've looked into Blue Eddy and those others. I have not yet. So, but I will. I'll look into that, and if I'll put out anything I find out on the reflector. Yes. Okay. Gotcha. Good to know. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, what Todd has said that the Blue Eddy is very, very well put together. It's very efficient. It's easier to work with. He says, but it is not as cost efficient as this one was. Now, the overkill system that I had here, the battery control module, and there's some screenshots there of what's going on. It'll tell you what's happening with your system. At that time, it was $150, and it was the Chaoshang. Anybody who speaks Chinese, I'm probably mangling it. The Xiaoshang was the company that supplied that module to Overkill, and they did the programming for the Bluetooth module of it to do the readout that you see here. About a year after I made this presentation, the Chinese company stopped producing that. So they decided to go to bigger. This is for a 4-cell module. They're going for the big one, 16 and 32 cell, these big power arrays and everything. So so unfortunately, Overkill had to stop making that. However, they have come up. I'll bring it up on screen later. They've come up with their own system now that they're putting together, but it's more expensive. It's $220, but it is a cleaner looking package. And the good thing about Overkill is, at least with this particular system, even if it was own fault, if through your own fault you fried it, they would replace it for free. And they would give good support all the way through. And that hopefully is the same policy they have with the current BMS that they put together. Let me see what else I have. Yeah, that's more of the shots. And this is a look at the portable setup. So I have the 4 cells all set up inside this toolbox here. And you see on the front, there's some switches and readouts. I have a USB-I, USB-C port. Yeah, I know we can't really see it here. I have a toggle switch you can put on. It actually has a voltage readout. And then the other thing I put over here is 2 Anderson power pole connectors. So that's, I could hook it up with my rig runner. And this is how I connect to the rigs on my radio station here. And for field day, that's how I do my power runouts as well. If I open up the box, I have 2 heavy-duty power takeoffs in the back here that we can hook onto an alligator clips. So that gives us more options for whatever else we want to do. And actually, I'm going to open this up, take the lid off. And you can have a look here at the layout here. That's the 4 cells right there. I've got the wiring harness that goes to the panel here. These you can get on eBay. Those are for people who want to do mods on the dashboard of their car to put in extra switches or sockets or such. I've added a couple of cigarette lighter style sockets. And there you go. You can come on up if you can focus it. I'll tilt it here. All right, there you go. Well, that's the cells. The BMS is on the side over here. In this corner, a little hard to see. You got this little blue light on it. That's the Bluetooth module. So that's what's putting the output onto my phone right now about the system here. And these are the heavy duty power takeoffs I mentioned over here. The wiring harness goes to the various switches and the Anderson power pole connectors and such. So if you want to make one of these, you can set up whatever works for you for what kind of power takeoffs you need, any sockets. As I mentioned before with Karen and I rewired the portable part for my CPAP, but the portable power pack for mine to use an Anderson power pole connector. Hers uses a cigarette lighter connector, so we're both covered on that. I have a 1,000 watt inverter, so basically I'm just going to keep my refrigerator shut. Yeah, I'm sure it would. I don't know how long, but you're all welcome up to come up here and have a look at it. I'm very happy with how this has worked. And as Wilson mentioned before, he was talking about these styles of batteries. You can cycle them a few thousand times, and they're still going to work. If I shut this down and leave it standing, they said it's like 1 to 2% power drain over I forget what period of time, but I really like them. And like I said, the prices are getting much better now than when I first put it up. But even the cost I put into all this back then, so altogether with the modules, $750, this is probably about $800 to $850 worth of material right here. I've been very pleased with it. It was well worth it as an investment at that time, and I think now the prices are even a little bit better on these style of batteries. Do we have any other questions on this?
Just a statement. They're selling those voltmeters and the batteries at a lot of ham fests. And the Raleigh Ham Fest is coming up in next month.
Thanks. Well, I plan to be there, so I'll probably look around at a few of those. It might be a good idea, since this particular one is not manufactured anymore, to buy one as a backup, because these BMSs do wear out and they do give way sometimes after a while. It'd be good to have a backup. One other thing to look out for is if you're going for the ones from China, and if you want a Bluetooth capable one, sometimes the Bluetooth module is separate from that. And sometimes it just provides Bluetooth capability, but you have to do the programming for it. So make sure they do have an innate program in it. I looked at a couple of them, and some of them even had on the App Store the programs for the Bluetooth programs for their BMSs. So some of them have them made already. Overkill did a good job of making theirs back then. And actually, let me go to that. Let me go to my browser because it's on there. Hello, where are we? Yeah, the problem I have is that the menu for Zoom is blocking that tab there. I'll show it to you afterward, but yeah, Overkill is still a company I would recommend. They're kind of expensive, but their support is very good on that. All right, any other questions regarding this? All right, yes, Wilson. Yes, sir. Yes, yes. Okay, I found it's called the Pathfinder BMS. That's the latest iteration that Overkill has. Well, oh, okay. Let me hand it back to Will. Yeah, Wilson, you need to repeat yourself.
One of the YouTube guys is Will Prowse, Prowse. I'm sure a search on Prowse will bring him up. There's also projects with Dave, and it's funny, these people start and you aren't quite sure, but he has really grown into it, and he presents some real measurements and performance with graphs and charts and numbers. So either of those are pretty good, and that's not all of them.
I would recommend one more suggested reading. Go to Google and type in UL, that's for Underwriters Laboratories, or ETL, Echo Tango Lima. That's another certified certification laboratory for UL or ETL approved lithium batteries. Some good reading there, and it probably will influence who you might want to buy from a quality and safety point of view.
Okay, that's it. Wilson's got more to say.
There is some very expensive antenna material on the back table, and it is going for a real bargain today. It's free, unless you want me to pay you, and I could pay you a little bit.
Dave, can you repeat all that for the people on Zoom?
Yeah. I'm just showing off here that this is something I picked off Amazon. This is a backup power LED light stand and everything. There we go. And it right now the battery packs in there will hold up for a little while, but once it gets below 1 bar, you got to recharge it. And that's why I have, amongst the things in my little bag of tricks here that lives in this case, is a connector that goes USB-C to the connector I have on there, so I can keep it up. So this is my backup emergency light for the house, essentially. All LEDs, so it's got pretty low current draw, and I will look that up, but there's 3 different power levels of light, so you can lower it down a bit. And if you just need one of them, it shut down too. The other neat thing about this is you can rather not use that stand. There we go. Oh yeah, it's got a hook. So you can hang that thing in the ceiling if you want. Those little pivots, so you can point them every which. Those are magnets on. Plug it on. So neat little thing. It was just under $50 on Amazon. So you can come up and have a look at it too. Sorry. pretty much. And actually, that thread looks like it'll work for too. All right. Well, thank you all. And please come on up and have a look, play with it.
Now our leader will give the invocation.
We're done. Thank you for coming.